Hello everyone. I hope you are having a very good day today. And depending upon where you are, it might be an evening or mid afternoon or early morning for you. First of all, thank you for taking the time to joining us. So, since we are starting on time, I'm just going to give a couple of minutes so that we get all the people who are waiting to join today's session and then we will get started. So, while we are trying to wait for other people, let us see who we have on the chat today. Just give a high shout out to all the people who have joined here. And if you can hear me loud and clear, just go ahead and say, yes, I can hear you and I can see my screen. Just go and say in the chat window so that I should be able to get a confirmation. And once we have the confirmation, then we will get started. So can you guys hear me loud and clear? And can you guys see the slide? Of course, this is the first screen. There is not much change, but are you able to see me and hear me? Not see me. Okay, I'm just going to increase my volume, so I guess it will be, otherwise it will be too loud. So while we are waiting for other people, quickly, people who are all working already in AWS and love the platform, give a high five to everybody. Just give a shout out in the chat saying, one, yes, I love AWS. I enjoy working with AWS and I've been doing it for X many years. Let us see who are all already using the platform and doing it. So let us see how many are already using the platform. Okay, looks like nobody wants to say anything about whether they're using AWS or not. Okay, it has been a minute and I'm just going to wait for some more time, just a few seconds, and then we'll get started. So today's session is going to be a follow-up on the series that we have been using for quite some time. It is an API best practice series that we have been doing. We have seen earlier how to create an API with caching, how to protect your API with WAF firewalls. We also saw how to synchronously invoke them, how to asynchronously invoke them, and we saw other mechanisms. So in the continuation of that series, today we are going to see how to do a request validation in your API. So we will go ahead and see what is a request validation, how you can do that, and why you need to do that, all that sort of things. So let us go ahead and get started. So before we go ahead, this is about me, who I am. This is Kumar here. I'm a solutions architect and I have been doing this for quite some time, almost like 16, 17 years now. And I have to create a lot of content and some of them are publicly accessible and available in YouTube, in the Valaxy channel. And some of them are also available as a structured course in Udemy. If you're interested in checking out what I have already created, you should be able to find them in the description of this video. And some of the code that we are going to see today and other code that I have written are open sourced, not all of them, but some of them, or most of them I should say. And that will be available in my GitHub handle Mystique. And likewise, if you like my work and appreciate my work, and if you want to encourage me, then you can go ahead and buy me a coffee as well in coffee.com. So that is about me. So let us go ahead and see what we are going to see today. So today's session is going to be about API gateway, and we are going to use CDK to build API gateway along with some backend and some customizations on top of that. And as I was asking in the beginning, today's session is going to be at an intermediate level. We are not going to talk about why AWS, what is AWS, what is Lambda, why you need to use Lambda instead of EC2. We are not going to talk about those basics. We are going to assume you already have some knowledge about API gateway and Lambda functions and what these services are and where you use them. So we are going to configure them and see how you can use best practices for that. We will touch a little bit upon the basics, but not too much on that. So that is on the session itself. And as I said in the beginning, we also have some code available. The description of this video will have the code that we are going to discuss today, and it is also available in my GitHub page. If you go to github.com/mystique, you should be able to find today's code as well. So now that we have done the introduction, let us go ahead and get started with the session. So let us start with what is an API, just to set the ground clear and we have clear understanding and we all have the same context here. So when you're talking about an API, it is a simple contract between the request provider, service provider and the service consumer. So when you're talking about service provider, it is some services that you offer on the internet and you have opened it for public or private access, and other people who are consuming it are your clients. So it is a contract on how you need to connect and what parameters that you need to send, and in response to those parameters, or what response you will send and what format it will be and how long you will take. So that is what typically an API is. If you're using something like a payments gateway in Amazon.com or a PayPal or any website that you use, there is an API on the back end of it. And Amazon API Gateway makes it really easy to build and deploy these APIs at scale. You can have multiple APIs, you can have version controls, you have authorizations, you have logging and security, and all these features are built into the API Gateway. So if you're looking at it as an architectural view in a simplified way, you have the client at the left hand side, which is sending a request to an API server. And that API server, depending upon that request, is going to talk to your backend web server, and if necessary, it is going to talk to your database as well. So depending upon the scenarios, the request might go back from the API gateway itself. For example, a cache request we saw in the previous videos, whenever there is a caching enabled, and if the cache can answer the request, then the response will be sent by the API server itself and it won't even hit your backend. So this increases your latency and application performance significantly. So if this is the architecture, how do we do this in AWS? So the first point that I always look at is database. Here I'm going to take a DynamoDB example. It is a NoSQL database that Amazon offers, and it is super simple to use, and it has a nice integration with the API gateway and the Lambda functions. Very simple. You don't need to have any database knowledge to start using it. So I prefer working with DynamoDB. But if you're comfortable with a SQL database like MySQL or Aurora or any other open source engines, then you can go ahead and use those SQL engines also. So instead of a web server, we are going to use an Lambda function because it is serverless, it is pay as you go, it is scalable, and it is very simple to provision and configure it. You just write a few lines of code and you have a really scalable compute platform available for you. So here is the crux of the matter, where you have the API gateway and the center of the equation, where you have the client at one side and API gateway in the center, which handles the backend interactions for you. So this is how a serverless architecture simplified looks like. You have a client and you have an API gateway and you have a Lambda backend. The Lambda backend might talk to an DynamoDB or some other database or other services, but it depends upon the request, and then the request gets handled. So we talked about request validation. Where is this request validation? You see the client on the left hand side, right? And it sends a request to your API gateway. So typically think of it like a shopping website like Amazon.com. So a typical request will be like, show me the details in my cart, or show me the previous orders, or give me the price of ABC product. So a request will have some parameters. It might be like your cart ID, your user ID, or if you're not logged in, for example, and you're checking some information like a score on a sporting event, then you will say, this is the sporting event I'm interested in. These are the players that I'm interested in. Give me the details of those sporting event with these players. So there will be some request. So this request is taken by your API gateway and then it gets sent to your backend for processing. So whenever you don't have the necessary inputs, you don't have to process them, or if the inputs are not in the right way, then you need to inform your user. For example, a common scenario is username and password. If you type in the password, and quite often you will see in the browser it says that the password should have and special characters, it should have 8 characters, it should be having 20 characters. So you have all these different kind of validations that are necessary to be done at different levels. So when you take an serverless architecture like the one that we saw earlier, you can do validation at the client side, that is on your browser side, where a simple example is easy to correlate is the username and password field, where username has to start with alphabets or numbers or special characters depending upon the application. Password will have special characters, 20 characters, 30 characters. So you can do some validation at the browser end, but in my opinion it is not enough to do it at the browser end, because you can spoof your browser and send an malformed request and corrupt your backend as well. So you need to do some validation at your backend as well. So in this case, you can do validation at API gateway, and we will later see how to go ahead and do that. But this is also not enough. Before you go ahead and store or process your input, you need to validate them at your backend, because your API gateway will not be able to have the complete business logic of validating whether the username is duplicate, or whether the username is, for example, it is ASCII characters, but is it a real human name? You want to validate it with some other ID or some other database, then you need not just string characters, but you need a proper name. So you need some backend validation, business logic validation at the backend also. So you need to do validation at all these places, whether it is at the browser level or at the API gateway level or at the Lambda backend level. So what we are going to do now is we are going to take up an imaginary API, which we are going to later deploy it, and see how we can do this validation in a very simple way that is easy to understand and easy to follow. So our imaginary API is going to be a Stationaries API. So basically this Stationaries API is going to have a stock called as pens. It might be multiple different types of pens, or one type of pen with multiple quantities, and each of them will have some price associated with it. Likewise, our Stationaries API will also have some stocks about pencils as well. And you have quantity, you have price, and then whether it is available or not. All those kind of metadata will be there. And likewise, we will have another category called as eraser. So basically our Stationaries API will have 3 categories: pens, pencils, and erasers. So these are 3 categories. So whenever we are going to talk about a pen, let us take this as an example, and we will be doing this for all the 3 categories. So we are talking about pens, and whenever there is a request coming for give me how many pens are available, what is the quantity available, and whether it is available or not. So when there is a post request for pens requesting for information, then what happens is this request from the client will be going to an API gateway, and this is the information that we'll be sending our API gateway. We are saying category is pens and give me the information about pens. So this request will be processed by our API gateway, and this is the response that will be sent back. So you can see here the stock keeping unit as 1, and then the type of pen is a gel pen, and then whether the status is available or not, and then there is a price of 83 pounds or dollars depending upon which currency you're selling at. So this is a very simple API, and likewise you can imagine how it will look like for pencils and erasers. So you will say category equal to pencils, and then you will get a response of pencil coming back, likewise for erasers also. So how are we going to validate it? So what we are going to tell to our API gateway is, if the post category is one of pens or pencil or eraser, then pass through the request to the backend. If that request is not one of these 3 categories, for example, somebody might ask for markers, somebody might ask for bags or tapes, then you go ahead and reject all those requests basically. So if it is not within those 3 categories, then just blindly reject them and send them back and response saying that this is not within the category of items that we maintain. Just go ahead and submit a new request. So how we do this in API gateway? So there is something called as a schema. This is a very standard template. There is nothing that you need to write except the ones that I highlighted in different colors. So you see here I have created a property. Under the property we have categories, And inside that category, we have something called as an enum value. That enum value is having those three particular categories of pens and a pencil and an eraser. And I also at the finally at the bottom I have mentioned that it is a required item. So if a request is coming in, it should definitely have a body field as category. And if that request is not having that category, then automatically the request will be dropped, and you will be getting a message something like an invalid request body. So putting it all together in the architecture, so I'm going to show you how it works in the backend. So you have your client, which is sending a request to the API gateway, and the API gateway has got this request now. It also has the schema of how to validate that request. So what it's going to do is it is going to do perform some request validation, and if the request validation is successful, then API gateway is going to trigger my Lambda backend. If the request is not successful, if it is in failed validation, then the request will be going back to my API gateway and say that, hey, this request is not valid, inform the end user. So this is how the architecture flow in the backend works. And before that, before going ahead and doing the demo itself, I informed you that there are some benefits in doing this. Of course, you need to do it at every stage, like in the browser and as well as in the backend. But the benefits of doing it in API gateway also is here. So when we are talking about request validation at the API gateway, one main benefit is cost optimization or cost savings. How it happens is when you do an request without validation, what happens is you are going to pay for both the API gateway cost as well as your Lambda cost, because the request is going back all the way to the backend. And if you have DynamoDB or some other backend, you can add the cost of those requests for read and write as well. But when you do it with validation, you are going to only pay for the API gateway. You are not going to pay for the backends for all the failed requests. So basically, you are not paying for all those failed requests at API gateway. And for other, I'm sorry, just to repeat it, you are not going to pay for any of those failed requests on the downstream systems, and that saves you a significant amount of cost because you are just paying for a smaller amount. If we just transpose it as a performance benefit, what happens is since your backends have been released from performing all those unwanted requests, then you have more capacity available for you to perform other activities. So basically your performance of your application also increases by stopping unwanted requests at API gateway itself. So you have multiple benefits of doing request validation at your API gateway. So what we are going to do now is we are going to go ahead and see how we can do this in our own account, how to deploy this, and then we will learn from that and then see if there are any other improvements you can be made, and we can all learn from each other. So as I always keep saying, you don't have to just listen and learn. You can go ahead and do it along with me. If you have been following my webinars, most of them have a live stream code available to you so that you can go ahead and watch it and do it along with me. All you need to have is a CDK installed in your systems, and then once you have CDK installed, then you can just be able to deploy the stacks and complete it along with me. So the demo architecture is going to be very, very simple as we have seen just now. This is the architecture that we are going to build. We are going to have a simple API, which is going to be the Stationaries API that we saw as an example, and the Lambda backend will be processing that request and sending it back. So let me trigger the code deployment in my console, and then I will take you to my AWS page and then see what is getting deployed, and we will walk through all the different resources that are getting configured and where especially this request validation happens. So I'm going to take you to my GitHub page where the entire code is there, and let me also put it in the chat so anybody who is interested can go ahead and try it as well. But the description of this video should also have the link to this page. So if I take you to my console page, okay, looks like something is broken here. So just give me one moment. We seem to have a problem, slight problem there. So until I fix it, if anybody has any questions or any other doubts, just go ahead related to today's session. Go ahead and put them in the chat window. I'm just going to quickly fix my screen so that it is visible and we can see all the windows. So apparently my screen got resized into a smaller window, so we should be able to see that now. And here we are in my GitHub page where we have the article and all the instructions on how to deploy this into your own account is there. And basically you just clone the repository and then set up the virtual environment and then you deploy the stack. And that's all it is. And I have also mentioned the same schema that we saw in the presentation earlier. It is also listed here, so you can go ahead and take a look and see how you can modify this for your own use cases. So we are most probably going to start at step 4 from my Visual Studio Code, because as I said, I have already cloned it in my local terminal and I have it in my local terminal also. So if you have already installed your virtual environment, so you should be able to have this venv or .env if you're using my instructions. And then if you do a cdk ls, you should be able to see only one stack in the account. And let me also initiate the deployment. Once the deployment begins, then we will go to our AWS console and see what resources are getting created. So my stack deployment has begun, as you can see here. So let me go ahead and take you to my AWS console again. So here we are in CloudFormation, and we should be able to see a new stack here. You can see that it is API request validation, and we should be able to see an Lambda and API gateway getting created. Okay, it is too early. It is just beginning here. So let me just go and show you. As of now, I don't have any APIs. Okay, I got signed out. Let me bring up the screen as well, because we will later go ahead and see what invocations are triggered and then what invocations send the backend invocations. I'm sorry, whether the backend Lambda is getting invoked or not. So we got our resources. Let us go ahead and check whether our stack is completed. Not yet. So we should be able to see a resource complete very soon. Okay, we got our REST API. Okay. So you can see here there is this API request validation here created. So if I go inside my API that has been configured, and the most important thing is under models. If you remember the schema that I spoke about, here is the request model for stationary. And if I open this, this is not looking perfect, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this into an JSON editor so that we will see it properly. So this is the same schema that we saw earlier in our GitHub article also, that is automatically that gets configured, because the CloudFormation is written in such a way that this schema is configured as an model in our API gateway. As you can see here, this is the model. And what I'm going to do is under, let me go to resources, I'm sorry, under post, come on. Okay, it is taking a while, come on. And a method request, and you can see here under request body, there will be an application JSON, and then the model name is added here. So basically whatever we configured in the model section here on the left hand side, the models is getting configured as an request body validation here. So you can go ahead and change this to any model that you want, or add additional models also that you want to validate. So this will ensure that any request that is coming into my API will be validated against this model or against the schema. Remember the pens, pencils, and eraser. If it is not matching any one of them, the API gateway is going to send a default response back. So here is the gateway responses. As of now, I have not customized it. If you go here, and you have a lot of different responses. So for example, sometime back we saw about quotas, where you exceed your quota, then a message will be sent back saying you have exceeded your quota. But in this case, what we are going to see is a bad request body, and the default response will be sent here. So the context.error message is nothing but something like a request invalid body or something like that, or invalid request body. So we can later go ahead and customize this and see whether the customized error message is coming back on our console or not. So we got our API deployed. I hope it is completed by now. Okay, here it is completed, and likewise we will also have a Lambda function, which is the backend which gets triggered and processes it, like for example the cost and quantity and whether it's available or not. If you go to the Lambda function, and it's a very simple code. This time I have not used a DynamoDB. All the data store information is stored here. You can see here in line 46 we have the information about this is the pens, and I'm sorry, I cannot zoom it here, I think. Okay, it doesn't work. Anyway, that is for the pens. This is the pencil, as well as this is the eraser. So whenever we send a request and it is matching the categories, then we will be getting the appropriate details. So if we go back to CloudFormation here, and the output section, we should be able to find the URL. So I'm going to, if somebody has an bash terminal or a shell in their own laptops, then I would highly recommend you to go ahead and try it along with me, because the commands how to validate this API is also given here. Say for example, all you need to do is go ahead and make a post request and make a header saying that this is going to be an application JSON, and then we can send a body which is going to be category pens. If you have a tool like Postman also, which makes it very easy to do it, but I'm going to show you how you can do this in your terminal using curl command. So I'm going to take you to my Visual Studio Code now, and this is deployed. So preferably I'm just going to copy this code from here. So I can say for example warehouse URL equal to, this is the URL of my stationaries. Let me put it in the chat window so in case somebody wants to try it. Oops, I missed in quotes, so there should be a quotes there. So let me just go ahead and do that properly. Okay, and now I'm just going to request for pens. So let me fold it. So what this is going to do is it is going to send an post command with this header and with this body. First let us request for pens, and we should be getting a response saying here the SKU is 1, and then it is the type of gel, and it is available, and price is 83. So what we can also do is we can just go ahead and say instead of pens we can go ahead and request for pencil as well. It should work. So I'm just going to see if I can edit it properly. So the string here is pencil. Likewise you can do it for eraser as well. So I just made an error, so just going to do it here. Oops, I'm just going to make that proper pencil. Let me just request it again, and this time we should be able to see the pencil message. You can see here this is for SKU 2 type 2. This one was stock keeping unit 1 for pens, and then this is for stock keeping unit 2. Likewise we can do the same thing for eraser as well. So all of this time, my API is validating the request, and that is why it is sending back the appropriate response. Say, for example, I want to do something like markers this time, which is not in my uh, allowed categories. This is not a category that I'm selling in my store. Then if I go ahead and request for this, so let me just go ahead and create some space. And if I request this, you can see here, it says invalid request body. So this is what I mentioned. So this request is responded back by the API gateway itself. It is not going back to a Lambda functions. If you're doing it in your own account, I would highly recommend you to go ahead and check your Lambda invocations, and you will find that whenever there is a failed request, there won't be any Lambda that is getting invoked at the backend level. So this way, you are saving your backend cost as well as improving your application performance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly show you how you can customize this error message by adding some more additional fields. Say for example, if I go back here, I just mentioned it. This is the key string which gives you an additional message of how what message that you can send back. But sometimes you don't want to give your users the actual error message, but you just want to say you did not pass through the validation. So I'm just going to pick up the string which will give me the exact error message that is coming back from API gateway. So let us go to our browser. And if you remember, under models, okay, it got reset. Let me go back to API gateway, and then we saw a section which said gateway responses, and under gateway responses I'm going to choose the one which says badge request body, and then select the one and this is a JSON dictionary, so I'm just going to say edit and then add an comma here, and then add a message saying custom error message, something like that, close the brackets and then put it in quotes. So let us go ahead and save this, and remember, you need to deploy our API whenever you're making some changes. So I'm going to deploy my API as the next activity. So when you're doing it with CloudFormation the first time, it automatically deploys for you. So that is why we didn't have to do this. But since we made some changes outside CloudFormation, now I'm just going to go ahead and deploy this. So it is deployed now, and I should be able to go back to my terminal and make a request. And if there is a failed request, and automatically the additional custom error message that we added to our response should also be visible in our terminal. So let us go ahead and try it. So this time, instead of markers, let me just go ahead and say bags, for example. So let me push up the screen. And sometimes it takes a few minutes for the response to get distributed, but it's a few seconds to a minute. But in this case, we can see here automatically the custom error message is added, and it clearly says the instance value bag was not found in the possible enum values of pens and pencil and eraser. So it gives a very clear indication to your end user saying what type of request they need to send, and if it is not conforming to this request, then automatically that request will be denied. So this is how you typically do an request validation in your own architecture for APIs. So that is all I had to demonstrate. And one last thing that I would like to show is, in case if you're interested in doing automation or build everything through CloudFormation, like what I have shown here, you can go ahead and check out my Cloud Development Kit course that is there in the link, and you can go ahead and see what other people are building and then learn from that as well. So I'm going to open it up for questions. If there are any questions related to this demo or otherwise, I can answer them, and after that we'll wind up for the day. So let me quickly check my chat screen right now. So for some reason, I'm not able to find the chat window. If there are no questions, then of course we can wind up early. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and then we can close up for today's session. So a quick question for the people who are watching right now. Did any of you try this in your own terminal, or did you get the response? A quick yes or no? Okay, looks like we have a lot of shy people who doesn't want to say anything on the chat. Not a problem. If what I will do is I will just wait for a minute. If not, I will just go ahead and wind up the session, and then we can go forward and enjoy the rest of the evening. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time. Have a nice evening, and I will see you in the next webinar on API. Enjoy your day.